Hello everyone and welcome to the Game of the Day presentation for round 2 of the 2016 British Chess Championships, which are currently being held at the Bournemouth Pavilion. Today we wander away slightly from the very top boards to encounter a really interesting game between international master Jack Rudd, a man who is known for his incredible speed of thought and play, and the Hungarian Grandmaster, currently residing in England, Thomas Fodor, a seasoned competitor, a man who is very difficult to beat. The opening gives an indication of the interest to come as Black employs the so-called triangle variation. Well, it's obvious to see why the opening bears that name. Black set up this triangle of pawns. It looks very solid. But in fact, Black has ambitious intentions when he plays this line. He intends to take that pawn on c4 and then try to keep it with b5. Now, it would be naive to suppose that Black could just keep this pawn with no troubles, as White can jab at Black's pawn chain already with a4. And in order to play this way, Black has got to fall behind with piece development. Black's intentions are slightly more subtle than that. They're deeper, as Black intends to try to establish a queenside pawn majority in the opening. He knows he may have to give the pawn back that he's won in order to do that, but by getting this pawn majority together, he's hoping to create a winning trump right out the opening. So let's see how Black gets this pawn majority going. Well, the first step along that line is the move a5, and again this looks incredibly ambitious because it's yet another pawn move in the opening, and we're taught that we should be developing pieces. Furthermore, Black has to give up the bishop at this point, as c takes b5, knight takes b5 is simply horrible for him. Black has already got losing pawn weaknesses in his camp. So bishop takes c3, Rudd takes back with the bishop, and Black takes back with the pawn, and here we go, another undermining move, b3. And with this move, White forcibly gets his pawn back, as again, c takes b3, bishop takes b5, check, leads to a position which is unfavourable for Black due to White's superior development. So Black is content just to try and catch up in the development arrears. He plays bishop b7, Rudd takes on c4, and Fodor goes b4. So this is the Noteboom or Abraham's variation. We're 11 moves into the game, but we are still far from the end of theory, as theoretical lines here can extend to move 20, 25 and beyond. And this is simply because it's such a very sharp position. If White's not careful, these queenside pawns are just going to mow him down. Similarly, Black must be careful because Black has White's central pawn majority to contest, and it's an open question as whether he can blockade this central pawn majority successfully. But for the moment, White must drop back and again allow Black to catch up in development, which is exactly what Black does. So as you can see, coming out of the opening, we've got a very unbalanced position on the board. It's all about pawn structure and what both players can do with it. I would say that results these days are generally favouring White from this position, but you can see why or how things could easily go wrong. White's got to play this position very correctly, or these queenside pawns are just going to go straight down and blow him away. So Rudd tries to get his central pawns going straight away with rook to e1, and there's nothing fancy about that. White's just preparing to go e4. So Fodor tries to blockade those pawns by going knight to e4. Now there's a parting of the ways. Rudd elects to play queen c2 straight away. Now if he wants to force the bishop to c6 here, he should probably play c5. And that sets up an idea of queen to c2, which threatens the knight and the move c6. So probably bishop c6 is the best move, and then we get a sharp position, which is similar to the game after queen c2, f5. This was the continuation in Kazimzhanov versus Grischuk, Tbilisi, 2015. And as those players are two of the world's best, we can see that this is a popular line with black right at the top of the tree, simply because it's so sharp and unbalanced. Rudd hits the knight, f5 was played, c5, and now Fodor, not wishing to blockade with his bishop, plays queen to c7. Perhaps a slightly more accurate move order for black, as the bishop doesn't need to sit on c6 rather passively. It can often come to d5, just to maintain the light square blockade in the centre. So Jack brings his bishop to c4, attacking the pawn on e6. Again, all well-known stuff. And Fodor plays a rare move here, rook to f6. Rare, only played in, I think, one game that I can find on the databases. More common is bishop d5, electing to shut down the light squares straight away. And after that, white can choose between damaging the black's pawn structure and trying to make something of it by taking on d5, or just waiting constructively with bishop b3. After which, once again, we get a sharp position arising when black takes and tries to maintain this light squared blockade with moves like queen c6, rook a6, and then maybe queen to b5. Can white get those queenside pawns off the board? Can he attack them? Can black get them going? As you can see, it's pretty sharp. So rook f6. Well, two ideas. Number one, defensive. Black protects his pawn. Number two, attacking. That rook's going to swing to g6, focusing on the g2 pawn. Rudd plays queen b3. And now the first new move of the game, knight to f8. As I say, there was only one previous example of this line, which we're going to see in a minute. But knight f8 is, of course, logical, as black once again defends the threat to the pawn on e6. Now, in this other game, which was played in Finland in 2009, a rather obscure game, black sacked the pawn by going rook g6. He evidently felt that the attack that he gained after bishop takes e6 check, king h8, was going to give him sufficient compensation for the pawn. As I say, this was a really interesting idea. White played bishop d5, black played a4. I think due to the fact that the queen is being decoyed away from the protection of the bishop, white's got to take on b7. Now black takes back. White interjects the move c6, trying to buy some time to take on b4. Black played rook to b8, allowing white to take on a4. This is the game Gladyshev versus Lukonen. And now black missed a shot. He played queen to b7. What he should have done, and I checked this on the engines this morning, is to launch a spectacular attack with rook takes g2 check. And I think you can say this is fairly thematic for this variation. You know, black sacked this pawn. He's trying to buy time to put the boot in on the white king. And apparently this should just lead to a draw. But I mean, you can see why the guy misses it, because he's got to find queen g4 in this position, which is not so easy to do. Just a quiet move, in a way, attacking the knight. And funnily enough, it's very difficult for white to defend against the threats. Because, of course, if he moves the knight, knight d2 is actually checkmate. So it turns out the best here is probably here to move the rook away, giving the knight back to give his king some air, and then to play queen to c2. And then we get a position which apparently is only better for black after queen h1 check, king e2, queen takes h2, king f1. Again, very difficult to defend against black's threats. There's no mate on the back rank, given that queen c8 check can be answered by knight f8. So king f1, and now this move h5. And apparently this position is at the very best equal for white. Looks weird because white's the exchange up, but as you can see, black's got a bind and his knights are incredibly strong. Meanwhile, white's bishop is a little bit passive. So that could have happened. It didn't. And going back to the game, I mean, we can see why, because it's very complicated. Fodor played knight to f8. And Jack decided to play rook ed1. Rook g6. So it's looking very, very similar in the sense that black is getting ready for this big heave-ho on the white king. But Jack is going to ask over the next few moves, well, how real is your attack? Because he plays very calmly now, he moves his king to f1. And Fodor decides to get in on this particular act by, again, similarly, safetying his king, putting his king in the corner, freeing up his knight on f8. And now comes rook a c1. Bishop to c6. Black is getting ready to push those queenside pawns. Maybe he's also getting ready to play a move like queen to b7, which intensifies the pressure against the white king side. But at the same time, he allows white to push forward in the centre with d5. So, just retracting one move, I wonder whether it would have been sensible to play knight f6 here, opening up fire against f3. Excuse me. And apparently after that, the best move is to play d5, after which we reach a very sharp position where white sacrifices a pawn, but in return he blockades the queenside pawns and he manages to get his pieces into good locations. There's no danger of mate anymore, and white's c-pawn could become very strong. Well, maybe Fodor didn't like that. He played bishop c6, but he runs straight into Jack on top form. White plays d5. Black takes on c5, and now the queen drops back to a2. And this really is all a question of time. White is trying to buy time to expose black's clumsy pieces on the c-file. Black is trying to negate white's time advantage to start an attack himself against the king. In this very complicated situation, Fodor took on d5. Probably a mistake, according to the computers. Well, they recommend bishop a4 here, and when white moves his rook, just a simple retreat with bishop e8. But then comes bishop e2, and black's still got to resolve the problem of the pin on the c-file. So I would imagine, having uncovered this bishop on b2, that white is in reasonable shape here, despite the fact that he's a pawn down, because black's pieces are so clumsy. Well, let's just see what happened in the game as Fodor took on d5. White takes back with the bishop. The knight defends on c5. But now I think white's on top, because black has relinquished his initiative and he's got really clumsy pieces on the c-file. So in order to maintain his attack, actually what we'll see is that Fodor has to sacrifice material. And as it turns out, the sacrifice is unsound. Now Jack plays knight to d4 here. He knows what he's doing. He's hitting the bishop. He's hitting f5. But at the same time, he's bearing h2. He's allowing black to come down and take that pawn on h2. He's analysed the position accurately, and he's assessed that black can't get any attack by taking on h2. Now, probably better, or maybe better, according to the machines, is knight to h4. And after that, they really do start to favour white in a big way. As after b3, white's taking on g6 with check. This is the difference between the game and this particular line. And if white plays knight h4, black plays rook g4, we can take on f5, he takes on h2, you're going to see this sort of thing in the game, and now bishop takes c6, and black runs out of compensation, as g2 is protected by the bishop. Instead, probably playing like Speedy Gonzalez, white plays knight d4, black plays b3, knight takes b3, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, and now black sacks this knight on c5 by taking on h2. Well, as you can see, this is rather sharp, but I don't think it's good enough. Black simply hasn't got enough firepower in the region of the white king to work up any significant pressure, and this allows Jack to play the simple move, knight takes c5, after which I think white is winning. Okay, he has to endure some discomfort, but I don't think black's got enough in this position. Rather miraculously, the white queen on a2 is protecting that rook on d5, so there are no tricks with all the white pieces protected. Black's only got 2 pawns for the piece, but more significant are white's counter-attacking chances by means of using this bishop on b2, which is an absolute monster, and black's weak back rank. So black is limited as to what he can do. He took on c5, Jack took with the rook on the first rank. Now, as you can see, the white rooks are incredibly active, putting pressure on black's pawns. Black continues to try to attack with f4. I don't think he's got anything better than that. And now white just carefully cements his position by playing bishop d4. Very good move as indeed. Turns out, actually, white can allow that capture on e3. He can play the spectacular move queen takes a5. Probably Jack didn't do that because he wanted to play this position. He knew he was winning, he just wanted to play it as safely as possible. But this move actually works. Turns out white can actually take with the pawn here. I mean, you can see why white doesn't do this because his king has to wander out to c3. But black cannot really work up any threats whatsoever here. And after rook e8, for instance, white can just go rook e5. And, well, I think he should be winning this. But Jack plays carefully. He plays bishop d4, fair enough. And when Fodor takes on e3, white just takes back with the bishop. And after queen b4 check, white puts his king on d3. And now I think we can safely say that white has consolidated. The king is safe. No way for the black rooks to get to the white king. So, yeah, it's just a question of technique from here on in. And Jack displays excellent technique. Black lurches forward with a4. White attacks the black queen. The queen comes in as far as she can go, threatening checks. Queen takes a4. Very good. An echo of that last variation, where white is happy to give up the queen in order to expose black's weakened black back rank. There's a check. The king comes back. Very significant that all the white pieces are protected here. Rook to g8. It's all looking rather desperate now. And white again plays very carefully, just centralising his pieces. The queen is very powerful on d4, and up comes the rook. h6. Black's got to do something about the back rank. Rook to d6. Getting another piece off the board. As if the rook moves backwards, white can play rook takes h6. Checkmate. So the rooks must come off. Rook e8. Queen d4, not sure what black was hoping for here. There isn't much to do. White again just gradually comes in, encroaching on black's position. There was nothing in the check there. Bishop d4, very good. King h7, and now rook b7 was the final move of the game. Staircase manoeuvres by the white major pieces, and eventually it's black's king that feels the heat. So, very interesting and a very good game by Jack Rudd. I mean, it's not easy to beat a grandmaster of Fodor's strength. Theoretically interesting and a very good game by Jack indeed.